The life of a medieval princess is often imagined as a quiet dream, filled with silk dresses, gentle music, and endless admiration. But the reality was far slower, heavier, and far more confined than the stories suggest. From the moment a princess was born, her life was already decided by politics rather than love. She was not raised to discover herself, but to serve a future she would not choose. As an infant, she was handed to wet nurses, governesses, and attendants, growing up surrounded by stone walls rather than warmth. Her parents, especially her father the king, often felt more like distant symbols of power than loving figures. Childhood was short, because in the medieval world, especially for noble girls, childhood was a temporary pause before duty began. As she grew older, education replaced play. A princess learned how to read prayers, not for pleasure, but for obedience. She was taught to sew, to manage servants, to walk gracefully, to sit silently for long hours, and to smile even when exhausted. Music and poetry were encouraged, but only as decorations of refinement, never as expressions of personal desire. She learned foreign languages, not to travel freely, but to prepare for a future marriage to a man she had never met. Every lesson carried the same quiet message: your body, your time, and your future belong to the crown. Her daily life moved slowly, marked by bells, prayers, and routines that rarely changed. She woke early in cold stone chambers where fires burned weakly in winter and smoke clung to the air. Washing was minimal, often limited to hands and face, because water was believed to weaken the body. Heavy gowns were layered onto her frame, tightened with laces that restricted breathing and movement. Beauty was discomfort, and discomfort was expected. Meals were rich but repetitive, and eating was a formal ritual, watched by servants and courtiers, leaving little room for privacy. Freedom was a rare and fragile thing. A medieval princess was almost never alone. Wherever she walked, someone followed. Her letters were read, her conversations monitored, her expressions noticed and remembered. Even her laughter could be judged as inappropriate. She lived her life on display, yet was deeply lonely. The castle was large, but her world was small, limited to halls, chapels, and gardens enclosed by walls. The outside world, full of markets, villages, and ordinary people, existed like a distant story she was never meant to touch. As adolescence arrived, fear quietly entered her life. Puberty was not discussed openly, and the changes in her body were treated with a mix of silence and urgency. Her value increased as she became suitable for marriage. Portraits were painted and sent across kingdoms, not to capture her personality, but to advertise her body as a political asset. Negotiations happened in rooms she was not allowed to enter. Men decided her fate while she practiced embroidery or prayer, pretending not to listen. Marriage was not a celebration of love, but a transfer of ownership. Many princesses were married as young as 12 or 13, sometimes younger. On her wedding day, she wore heavy jewels that symbolized wealth, not happiness. The man waiting for her might be twice her age, a stranger, or even someone she feared. She was expected to obey him immediately, to leave her home, her language, and everything familiar behind. Once married, her body no longer belonged to her at all. Producing an heir became her primary duty, and failure to do so could result in rejection, isolation, or worse. Pregnancy was dangerous, especially in a time without medical knowledge or hygiene. Each childbirth carried the risk of death. Pain relief was minimal, and complications were common. Many princesses never survived their first delivery. Those who did lived with constant anxiety, knowing that their worth depended on producing healthy sons. Daughters were welcomed politely, but sons were celebrated with relief. Even motherhood did not guarantee closeness. Royal children were often taken away to be raised by nurses, leaving the princess to grieve quietly in silence. Emotion had little space to exist freely. Crying too much was seen as weakness. Anger was unacceptable. Desire was sinful. Loneliness was expected. Religion offered comfort, but also reinforced obedience. Princesses were taught that suffering was noble, that patience was virtuous, and that endurance was their greatest strength. Many turned inward, finding peace in prayer, routine, and the slow passage of days that blurred into one another. Political danger was always present. A medieval princess could be used as a hostage, traded in alliances, or punished for the failures of men. If her husband fell from power, she fell with him. If her family went to war with her husband's kingdom, her loyalty was questioned. Some were imprisoned, exiled, or quietly erased from history. Their lives ended not with dramatic endings, but with fading relevance, locked away in convents or forgotten castles. Even beauty, often celebrated in stories, was a burden. A beautiful princess attracted attention that could become dangerous. Jealous queens, suspicious husbands, and aggressive suitors all posed threats. Rumors spread quickly, and a single accusation could destroy her reputation. She had little ability to defend herself. Words spoken by men carried more weight than her truth. As years passed, the princess aged quietly. Youth, once prized, faded, and with it her political value. If she had sons, she became a symbol of stability. If not, she became invisible. Many found solace in religion later in life, retreating into prayer and charity. Some sponsored churches or helped the poor, finding purpose in small acts of kindness within rigid boundaries. Sleep, like much of her life, was restless. Castle beds were uncomfortable, rooms were cold, and the night brought fears of illness, childbirth, betrayal, or invasion. Guards paced outside her chambers, reminding her that even rest was never truly private. Dreams were often her only escape, drifting slowly through thoughts of places she would never see and lives she would never live. When death finally came, it was often quiet and unremarked beyond formal mourning. Her legacy was measured in alliances made and heirs produced, not in happiness or fulfillment. History remembered her name, if it remembered her at all, as someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother. Her inner world, her fears, hopes, and unanswered questions disappeared with her breath. The real life of a medieval princess was not a fairy tale, but a slow, restrained existence shaped by duty and silence. It was a life of waiting, enduring, and surviving within beautiful prisons of stone and gold. And as the centuries pass, their stories remain whispered through cold castle walls, reminding us that crowns were heavy, and the lives beneath them were heavier still.